Welcome, everybody. I, Councilmember Tola Martz, call the February 27th, 2024 City Council Services, Safety, and Parks Committee meeting to order. First up on the agenda is public comment, of course. So there are multiple public comment opportunities at tonight's meeting. There's a general public comment opportunity at the beginning of the meeting, or you can make comments after the presentation and council question and answer period on each of tonight's agenda items. Members of the public may address council at this time in person or virtually. Those who signed up in advance to make comments will be called on first. If you're joining us virtually and would like to make comments, please raise your virtual hand. If you're on the phone, press *3. If you joined by computer or smartphone, look for a hand icon. This varies by device. One option may be to go to the participant panel and choose the raise hand icon in the lower right-hand corner. If you're in the room and did not sign up, I will ask for other speakers before closing this portion of the meeting. We'll wait for a moment to see if anyone raises their hand. Clerk, has anyone signed up to speak or indicated a desire to speak?
Chair Martz, we have no one that signed up prior to the meeting to speak, and we currently have no virtual attendees.
All right. Well, as a reminder, written comments can be submitted at any time to citycouncil@issaquah.gov. Then next up, I believe, minutes? Let's see. Yes, approval of the minutes from the January 23rd meeting.
Mr. Chairman, I would move to adopt the minutes from January 23rd, 2024 for the Services Committee.
Thank you, Councilmember Joe. Do we have a second?
Second.
Deputy Council President, thank you so much. Any discussion? All in favor say aye.
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 Opposed? Abstentions? That passes unanimously. Now we can move on to our first agenda item, which is...
Mr. Chairman, should we just mention, just for the record, that Barb DiMichele is joining us virtually tonight, and that as the people look out, they only see two of us here, but all three of us are present.
Thank you so much. That if somebody were not present, they might be confused by that, and thank you. Yes, we do have a quorum, and let's see. So first up is ID 1552, Human Services element of the Comprehensive and Strategic Plan, and Monica Negrilla, our Human Services Manager, is going to kick us off.
Good evening, council members. Thank you so much for having us. Yes, this is Monica Negrilla, Human Services Manager. So we would like to provide you tonight with updates and seek input on three related topics within the broader human services theme. On one end, beginning with the broader long-term focused comprehensive plan, Valerie Porter, our associate planner in the Community Planning and Development Department, will walk us through the human services element of the comprehensive plan. Next, we'll focus on the more time-limited, a little bit more focused 5-year Human Services Strategic Plan, where Hannah Roberts, our Human Services Coordinator, will provide you with updates on the implementation so far at our 2-year mark. And then we'll also talk about next steps. And last, we would like to also, just for a few minutes, talk about a specific project within the Human Services Strategic Plan, in particular, the emergency housing program. So as you might have noticed, we are starting with the broad, long-term, comprehensive plan and then funneling down more specifically to the strategic plan and then specific projects within the strategic plan. Actually, Valerie will have a visual slide there in a few minutes for you. So in terms of specific direction, we would like to ask you tonight on one end if you have any questions or suggestions regarding the human services element of the comprehensive plan. Next, we would also love your input on the strategic plan implementation to date. And then for the emergency housing program, we have a few more specific questions. As we are in a pilot stage with the project, we would love to see if there's even initial interest in exploring further options post-pilot as this project is set to end at the end of 2024. And then if such interest exists, we would love to further hear from you if there are any special operational programmatic considerations that we should have as we plan to return to you during the biannual budget process. So with that, as I just started us off, I can pause if there are any initial questions, but otherwise I'll invite Valerie to walk us through the human services element.
Sounds good.
Thank you, Monica. Hello, my name is Valerie Porter. So I'm going to start off by talking about the comprehensive plan, just to give you a little background. So in 1990, the state required all fast-growing cities and counties to develop a comprehensive plan. And this is intended to address population growth, sprawl, and just the overall quality of life impacting Washington. The comprehensive plan is required to address 14 goals, and the city has addressed these 14 goals in these 10 elements that are listed here. So here I have a slide addressing the process for the comprehensive plan update. So the long-range planners have been working with staff from various departments to draft proposed changes to each element. These changes have then been reviewed by staff and then their respective boards and commissions, and then we've requested recommendations. The recommendations then go to the Planning Policy Commission. To date, all of the boards have provided recommendations to the Planning Policy Commission. The comprehensive plan is still being finalized, but once it's finalized, it will be presented to the Planning Policy Commission, and then they will then provide a recommendation to council, and then the final step will be being reviewed by council for adoption. So the comprehensive plan has 3 overall goals. The first one is compliance. We would like to make sure that the comprehensive plan is compliant with all state and county requirements. The second goal is coordination. We want to make sure that during this update, the work, all the elements are aligned with the land use and growth projections, and there's also no duplicates between each element. The third goal is accessibility. The administration would like the comprehensive plan to be easily accessible and be a usable tool, not only for staff, but also for the public. Here I have a flow chart kind of showing the relationship between the comprehensive plan and other plans and regulations. The comprehensive plan is an essential tool that's used to articulate a series of goals, objectives, and policies that are intended to guide day-to-day decisions by elected officials and city staff. The comprehensive plan identifies the vision and how the city plans to grow. The vision is basically the why. Why is this Issaquah's vision? The comp plan then feeds and then talks about the goals and policies that discuss what the city wants. This then feeds into the functional plans, and what we're calling functional plans are the human services plan, the park plan, the economic development plan, and these talk about the implementation. They provide the framework on how the city actually wants to achieve these goals through strategies, actions, and possible resources. The functional plans then inform the city budget and regulations, which you can see below. So here I have a Venn diagram basically showing the relationship between the comprehensive plan and the functional plans. And you'll notice that there's overlap between the goals and policies, and that's because the goals and policies are addressed in both documents. But again, the goals and policies and comprehensive plan are of higher level, addressing the why, and the functional plans are addressing how these will be accomplished. The comprehensive plan can be updated in 2 ways, annually and periodic. The periodic is required and it occurs every 10 years. And the city can also update the comprehensive plan annually, which is optional. Usually during this time, there are minor updates, and that would be something like if a parcel was rezoned, we would update, or if a strategic plan was updated, then we would update it annually. But usually we try to stick to the 10 years, and the 10 years usually, right now we're currently going through the periodic update, and this is to guide development until 2044. So for the human services element, the administration is proposing that the element be revised to be more consistent with the adopted strategic plan. And so this change would consolidate the goals and policies and also address any necessary topics. So in your packet, we provided a matrix of changes, and I just kind of want to explain what that document is. Basically, the column on the left is showing the original policies that are currently in place right now, and then the column on the right is showing the revised policies that would then replace those goals and policies. So next steps. In the next few months, the docket will be presented to council, and the Planning Policy Commission will hold a public hearing to review the final comprehensive plan. From there, in Q3, the comprehensive plan will be presented to City Council, and then hopefully by Q4, we will receive certification. So I'd like to present the question, which is, what questions or suggestions do you have regarding the comprehensive plan human services element? And before I hand it over, are there any questions?
Councilmember Cho.
Thank you. I have a general question related to housing and the emergency housing needs that are out there. I don't necessarily need an answer tonight, but I want to make sure that Human Services is talking to the people that are working on housing in our city as we're going forward with the comprehensive plan. As you know, the King County Council came down with the county planning policies for housing, jurisdictional housing for Issaquah, and it was 3,500 units is what they want us to have planned for by 2044. And so of those units, we have non-permanent supportive housing, permanent supportive housing, which are both in the 0 to 30% AMI category. And then there's a category of jurisdictional net new emergency housing needs. All three of those fall under the Human Services umbrella a little bit. And I would hope that Human Services and the planning people will work together on those, because the non-supportive the non-permanent supportive housing in the 0 to 30 category is around 1,000 units. And the permanent supportive housing is about 575 units. And then the jurisdictional net new emergency housing needs are a pretty big number too, in terms of what we're being asked to think about, of 669 units. So as we're looking at the comp plan, I would just hope that, again, the planners are talking to the human services people, because the human services people really know what's happening on the ground. You really know what our people need, when they need it, how effective it is to give a person that's unhoused housing right away. That's the fastest way to solve the problem rather than let it languish. So if you have any comments about the coordination between housing or how housing works into the comprehensive plan, I'd certainly like to hear it, but I don't necessarily need answers tonight. But I would just want the two different elements of our city to be talking to one another.
Great. I won't get into detail about that specific thing, but I will say that the comprehensive plan has a housing element, and that is most likely where that's addressed. But even though I'm not here to talk about the housing element, I do know that we do work with other departments to ensure that the policies that we put in place can actually be achieved.
And I see Council Deputy President Michelle has her hand up.
Thank you. Sorry I can't be there tonight. I first want to start off and say that the proposed changes to the comprehensive plan element are really excellent, and obviously a lot of really good work was done. I did have a question about the recent influx on the east side of refugees and people seeking asylum, and did not see that that had been included in the revisions. And so I'm just wondering if we could get feedback a little bit about how that situation is being perceived by our human services staff.
Good evening, Deputy Council President DeMichelle. Thank you so much for that question. This is Monica Negrilla. And thank you so much for bringing that topic of refugees and those who are seeking asylum to this meeting. As Human Services staff, this is something that we started tracking as we are working with our nonprofit partners and we hear from them. And with your permission, we would like to include it in our priorities, staff priorities for this year and for next year to continue to track, monitor, and perhaps if this becomes a crisis at a larger scale that's gonna last for multiple years, then we can consider including it in the human service element in the comprehensive plan. Since this is, at this point, a new and developing situation or issue, we thought that probably it's best to continue. Sorry, I think somebody.
I'm lucky or lucky.
So yes, so definitely very, very important topic. We started hearing from our nonprofit partners that, for example, those providing financial emergency assistance, they have seen an increased number of refugees asking for rent assistance. We have seen in our Human Services office, sometimes people walk up asking for housing assistance. We heard from the school district that they have more and more families, not at a large scale, but definitely it's there. So.
Thank you. And Chair Martz, can I ask a second question?
Of course.
Okay. There are several places in the proposed changes where we talk about collaboration with our nearby cities. And one of the areas that might be useful would be collaborating with Redmond, Kirkland, possibly Bellevue on a needs assessment. I know we do one. I believe Redmond conducts a needs assessment. Bellevue certainly does one. And would it be cost effective if we coordinated with some of our fellow cities? And what would be the drawbacks of doing that as well?
Thank you also for that question, Deputy Council President DeMichelle. Absolutely, I think the regional needs assessment has been discussed in prior years as well in the East Side community among human services partners and cities. At this point, there are pros and cons for sure as we continue to evaluate if there are cost-effective measures. Because the region is fairly large and because each city has still their unique needs and unique opportunities, so far we have not been successful in just getting all together and trying to see all the benefits, but definitely we continue to have discussions. I think in terms of cost-effectiveness, because of the multiple cities and the large area, it tends to be a very expensive project and frankly time-consuming. I'm not sure that there's one city that would be able to even take the lead on that, or even just the decision on who would take the lead on that. It's a little bit complicated. Not to mention that in order for it to be done well, you really need to also be able to get to the granular level of the unique features for sometimes even neighborhoods, and that's difficult to do when you do a regional approach. So long story short, to say definitely pros and cons. We can certainly continue to have discussions at regional level, and our needs assessment is scheduled to be reviewed in 2 years. And as other cities are considering that, then we can try to see if we can align for a regional approach on that. Thank you.
Thank you.
So I have a question, which is, Valerie, could you put the slide back up? And had a slide that talked about sort of the different facets that go into the comprehensive plan. Yeah, you had one that was sort of a funnel that had like 7 areas that come to PPC and then going to council. the slide that moved from left to right. Right. One more, I think. Sorry, there was, go back earlier. It's got like 7 to 1 going, keep going. There. Thank you. My question is, where is public safety? Because one of the things that's happened in the last 5 years is we have really developed some things that are at the intersection of public safety and human services. And I'm interested to know how we address that important change that's occurred since.
Thank you for the question. Stephen Pideaux, Long Range Planning Manager. So for the comprehensive plan, we have an element that's the capital facilities that is going to be combined with utilities and public services. And that's where we actually address public safety under public services. And that's where we look at level of service for emergency services, that being police and fire, and how the city can coordinate a lot of meeting those levels of service across the city and addressing that question, or addressing public services for different neighborhoods.
Okay. I mean, it seems important that we've had this, you know, we have new positions in the city. We have human services folks embedded within the IPD. And it really, the nature that the idea that there is an important intersection between services and public safety is, I mean, there were people in 2015 who knew that was important, but it wasn't something that we voted on with our dollars, right? And it seems like a miss if there isn't. I'm just curious where that, like I said, changed since 2015.
And I don't believe it's a policy that's actually called out in any of the elements, but more of actually, I believe, a objective or action. Oh, go ahead.
We do have it in the strategic plan. So while it's not in the comprehensive plan, we do have it in the strategic plan, being considered like a more specific and newer item. But that's also a good point that, you know, perhaps in the upcoming years, we could add it to the comprehensive plan as an element. Right now, we do have it in the strategic plan in terms of collaboration with the police.
I think one of the most successful and enduring aspects of everything that's happened in the last 5 years and BLM and sort of a change in how we look at things is the importance of that section. So I don't know how you talk about that on a 20-year time horizon, but it would be a shame if we didn't talk about it anywhere on a 20-year. Other
Mr.
questions before we move on?
Mr. Chair,
Yes.
if I
City Administrator.
can, just add a little bit more to what Ms. Negrilla said. Mayor Pauley, in her calling for a task force to look at the strategic plan, one of the major drivers of that was exactly what you talked about, which is that public safety component. The comprehensive plan, certainly has pieces to it where this gets covered, but I think the mayor felt that the strategic plan really is the vehicle for that, and that is why she's convening. First meeting is this Thursday evening of a community task force to look at the strategic plan and recognize, among other things, that public safety needs to be more addressed, look how it integrates into other parts of the city, kind of catching up, as you mentioned, with the reality of the last 5 years, and as we look moving forward. So the comp plan is one tool, but I think the strategic plan is also another major tool.
Thank you for that clarification. I appreciate it. All right. Back to it. Thank you, Valerie.
That's on. All right. Good evening, council members. My name is Hannah Roberts. I'm the Human Services Coordinator, and in my role, I focus on planning and implementing our Human Services Strategic Plan. And this plan is really a dynamic plan that is a five-year plan that is addressed to be a roadmap to help guide policy planning and funding planning. And this strategic plan was designed really out of a robust community needs assessment back in 2021, where we really started to get a qualitative and quantitative understanding of what the barriers in Issaquah are and what the needs are. And from there, we found different themes. And with those themes that came up were what we call focus areas in our strategic plan. And those areas are physical and behavioral health, where we saw this mental health crisis happening across the board. We also saw a housing continuum. This includes affordable housing, keeping a roof over people's heads, as well as services for homelessness. We also saw cultural specific services and language access, and this really speaks to the changing demographic we are seeing in Issaquah and our need to have relevant services. And then we also found community resources. This is the catch-all be-all, where really we identified the basic needs, legal services, employment services. So from these focus areas, we really found what are our goals? How do we address these barriers? We created a strategic approach and strategic actions to address them. So where we are at today, back in March of 2022 is when we adopted the plan and started implementation right away. And we bookmarked a 2-year review out of the 5-year plan, really with the intentions of understanding. Well, in 2021, the pandemic was happening with rapid changes. So we wanted to make sure that we were still relevant in 2024 before before the next Human Services Grant funding cycle. And so we set up a 2-year review. And then in 2 more years, we have another update and review scheduled. And in this implementation, we really wanted to make sure that we were tracking our successes to make sure that we were actually moving the needle. And we have 20 different outcomes that we measure. You can find more information in Exhibit A, but this is just a sample here. So we've been busy in the last 2 years. We have lots of great highlights of what Human Services has done within our strategic plan. The first one being our Human Services grants. We increased our funding from $500,000 to $556,000+, which is an 11% increase. We had many wonderful events, including resource fairs, educational events about mental health, homelessness services, wage gaps, as well as cultural events and celebrations. We also had a lot of growth in our behavioral health and homeless outreach program and our emergency housing program. More information to come this evening later from Monica Negrilla. And then another need we heard was there just weren't enough services in Issaquah. And so in the last 2 years, we're excited to see 16 additional services and programs here in this area, in which we also have a virtual resource room, which is a free public access to nonprofit organizations to reduce some of those barriers and time waits. With any plan, though, there's always opportunities for growth. One of our call-outs is our multi-resource center. This goal is really a vision of having a physical space with our nonprofit organizations, but we are very keenly aware that there is space challenges here in Issaquah. Another area that we recognize too is our educational community events. Although those have been executed and successful, we still find opportunities for additional community partners to increase and improve those events. And then the other area is really, we question what is our city roles and our cultural events. We have in the past taken the lead. However, we really have recognized that we want to be more of a support role and make sure that we are elevating the voices within those cultures. So we decided in the 2-year review, we wanted to have some focus groups to really make sure that we are aligned with our current needs and our focus areas. We had 5 different groups where we spoke to different internal departments. We opened it up to the public. We spoke to residents. We spoke to our nonprofit organizations, as well as our Human Services Commission, where I was able to present similar information and make sure that we are still aligned with our areas of needs. And really from those focus groups, bottom line is we heard really our basic, there's no major changes that are needed to our strategic plan. The needs still remain the same. We heard a few highlights of senior services, youth preventative services, childcare, culturally appropriate services, but all really align within our strategic plan. The one thing that we did here were our nonprofit recovery funds are depleting and the increase in needs are still up high. So I'm going to invite now Monica to talk about what our next steps are.
Before you step up the podium, I just had a question about the cultural events that you referenced. I know that, we try to be supportive of Juneteenth, Black History Month. I think the mayor did a Black History Month event just on Sunday. Day of the Dead for our Hispanic culture. Certainly our cultural calendar recognizes all the different holidays that are there. We're taking small steps toward that. Did you get any feedback from your focus groups on cultural events and what the city can be doing a little bit better to help foster and support those?
Yeah, I think the feedback we received were very positive, that there was a lot of appreciation for these events, and that we have created a call out in space for these celebrations. I think the biggest feedback that we received, though, an area of growth that we can have is just making sure that we're having the right partners take leadership of those events. And so that was ultimately what we heard. Unless, Monica, you want to add anything else?
Well said, Hannah. I think the only other thing to add to what Hannah just said is that also there are many other cultures represented in the community that they're not always highlighted here. So then just picking and choosing just a few does not seem like fairly represents the community.
Great, thank you. I appreciate that feedback.
So I have a question, follow on. You briefly showed a sample implementation tracking, human services strategic plan, measuring success, outcomes review. That seems, those metrics, it was, those were chosen for specific reasons, and they were, there was a lot of thought that went into those metrics. And when I hear a statement like no changes are needed to our strategic plan, it seems like an important step in evaluating our strategic plan would be to evaluate what these metrics tell us. More, and it's certainly important to go ask focus groups how we're doing and all that, but there was an attempt to have these metrics be a measure of our success. And so where's the step where we review those and see what it tells us about our success thus far?
Yeah, thank you so much for that question. And so, yes, we shared, as you have in your packet, the exhibit, we shared the information with our focus group, so they had a chance to review them and provide us feedback on those.
Seems like that's something you'd also want to share with and get feedback from the council on.
We would love.
Well, and that's part of the discussion this evening.
Yes.
Then present those metrics.
Excuse me?
Then present those metrics.
And I think they're in the packet.
Yes, they're in the packet, isn't it?
So if you'd like, we can walk through them piece by piece. If there's a particular one that resonates with you, you'd like to talk more about, we can do that as well.
I would. I would have expected a formal presentation on those metrics. Quite a bit of effort went into picking them, and it seems like if we said that they were going to be our measure of success, that it would be more than put in the back of a packet somewhere.
Again, we did not want to presuppose the committee's desire to get into this. So if you'd like to spend more time with this, we can either do it right now, or we can put it on a future agenda and we can walk through each of the metrics. I think what you're hearing from the staff is that we feel good about what's there. We feel good about what we're measuring. We've gotten feedback from our focus groups that we're on track. This is sort of a midpoint piece of this. We'll look at reevaluation of this as we re-up this in, 2 years' time. Again, the citywide strategic plan also is going to be looking at its metrics over the course of the next several months. And so my guess is that the citywide metric review will then feed the process for the revision of this plan in 2 years' time, which will probably realistically begin, in the next 12 months or so, as we start working with the appropriate boards and commissions and stakeholders. So, but again, if the committee wishes to go through each of the measures, we can do that this evening or come back at a future meeting.
Well, I mean, if I was going to ask that, and I would be curious to know what my fellow council members feel, I would not suggest that you guys do it on the spot without having a chance to prepare it. It would, I guess my suggestion and what I would ask my fellow council members would be, you know, would we like to see a presentation on the metrics and get a chance to have those be brought forward on camera and take a look at them and see what we think.
Well, I'll just jump in. I think that the slide that's up there tracks the outcomes and then how well we did on, you know, between year 2022 and 2023. And I'm comfortable when I reviewed it, seeing the improvement that was there and the efforts that were being made and the things that we learned and the institutional knowledge that we gained from doing those over the year. I don't think I don't think staff needs to come back with a separate presentation necessarily, but if there are any highlighted ones that we'd like to talk about tonight, I certainly would welcome the conversation. If you have one or two or three that you'd like to pull out at council chair's discretion, I think the staff is prepared to probably discuss those.
Councilmember DiMichele?
This gives me a great opportunity to highlight one of the statistics or one of the data points that just jumped out at me, and that's the third one. The number of unduplicated individuals supported by the Issaquah Food and Clothing Bank more than doubled, almost tripled. And I understand that the availability of food and the availability of funding has not kept pace with the number of people that are using the food and clothing bank. So I guess I don't think that we need to bring the staff back necessarily to make a presentation just on these metrics, but you know, I think it would be of interest to have that discussion. I'm just not sure that, given our packed agendas sometimes, whether that's necessary or not.
I mean, the slide that we're referring to is like 20% of the metrics that are in the packet.
And we could put up the pages if you'd like. It's 4 pages in the report. We have it ready. We could walk through it quickly.
If my fellow council members don't want to spend more time on it, then I don't want to spend more time on it either. So I've made my point and I lost my point, so let's move on. I don't know why we wasted all that time writing these metrics in the first place. We spent months coming up with these metrics. If we're not going to use them, we shouldn't have wasted our time.
Well,
and
Councilmember Marks, we are using them, and they're here in the packet. We've shared them with our stakeholders. We've shared them with the boards, and we're here to share them with you. We had one illustrative slide, and we're prepared to talk about all of them if you'd like. We agree. They're very important, and we're very proud at what we've been able to do. So they're in the report that's in the packet. I'll say I didn't think that the council was interested in going through every single one, and that's why it's not in the presentation. So, but we're happy to do that again tonight or a future meeting.
All right. You can continue.
Give me just a moment too. Okay, so in terms of next steps, we identified a few priorities for 2024. Again, this is not to say that this is all that we will do in 24, but this is our, if you would like, specific priorities. One of which being the emergency housing program, long-term planning, solidifying our behavioral health and homeless outreach program into a co-response model, enhancing that program, looking at alternative ways to track the data that we've been tracking in these programs, and of course also the 2025-2026 Human Services Grant Reviews and Recommendation Cycle. It's happening this year. And so we'll continue on that end with the implementation of the strategic plan for the next 2 years. And in 2026, we plan to begin the needs assessment. As we talked earlier, we'll consider regional partnerships. And we hope in 2027 to come back with having a proposed updated plan for adoption for your review. And so just going back on why we wanted to just highlight for a few minutes the emergency housing program for you today, and just provide you a brief refresher and overview. As you may recall, we launched this program last year in July of 2023. Thanks for your support. We have it as a pilot project. This was approved through December of 2024. And so we really learned many lessons, and we had quite a few success stories. On the screen, you also see, you may recall the continuum, the housing continuum visual that we created a few months ago. The emergency shelter program is one of the many ways in which we can respond effectively to the community. It falls probably in that non-permanent supportive housing model. And to date, we had 23 participants who were benefited from this program. Perhaps the numbers don't really tell the story on how meaningful this program is. Definitely we had quite a few success stories, from people moving to permanent housing to people obtaining jobs, going to college, certifications, you name it. But we also had very challenging stories that are now successful, from people who have a safe place to be. That's 23 less people who are not on the streets of Issaquah in encampments right now. And that also a pretty significant number of people that we serve have chronic medical conditions that have not been addressed for many years. So now that are indoor, those are being addressed, and quite frankly, they are life savings. We have people with COPD, with congestive heart failure, with diabetes that has not been successfully treated for many years. So while we track a lot of data, there's a big component on data that cannot really be tracked unless we tell the story, right? So all that to say, we would like to, before we come back to you in the biennial cycle for the budget and propose options to you, we would like to just preliminary get your thoughts on, as we start preparing for this. Is there interest from this committee in extending the emergency housing program past pilot stage? And if there is interest, are there any considerations that we should keep in mind as we explore options for program operations? We can think about from funding options to management of the shelter to location. There are so many considerations we can have in place, and we would love to hear your thoughts as preliminary as we start getting ready for this. And so to recap the direction that we are looking from you tonight, number one is the committee in agreement with the Human Services Strategic Plan implementation to date and with the identified priorities for 2024, and specifically for the emergency housing pilot project. Again, is there interest in exploring options for this program post-pilot? And if there's such interest, are there special operational considerations that we should keep in mind? Thank you for that. And we are available for questions.
Councilmember Joe? Oh, I'm sorry. She didn't have her hand up. So.
Okay. Thank you for that, putting meat on the bone, so to speak, for emergency housing. Appreciate that. Wanted your take on just operationally. Well, first off, I'm in favor of continuing developing this program beyond its post-pilot stage, first off. But I wanted your feedback and your experience you've had with the model that we have, in the sense it's not a 24/7 model. It's really based on normal work shifts for our human services staff. Has that been working? Are we missing some people? Are there people falling through the cracks, quote unquote, still? Or is that model been sufficient for us up to now?
Thank you so much, Councilmember Joe, for the question. So Yes and yes, in short. On one end, yes, the program has been successful, but the program is also just one of the many resources, and not everybody is the best candidate for that resource. As you may recall, the motel still functions as a motel. So, of course, that the program is best suited for a person who can function within a place that also runs a business. And so then to answer the question about are there people that still fall through the cracks? Yes, there are. Not many, but there are. And there are those who just can't function in that environment. But frankly, those are the same people who also cannot function in all the other shelters in the area. So there's a special need program that is very hard to find, to be frank. Yeah.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah.
The next question I had was concerning the teaming up that we've done with our human services staff, with a police officer at times when it's necessary.
Mm-hmm.
After George Floyd and some of the protests that have been going on, has that teaming up of the two elements led to less openness to receive services, or have you managed to kind of tailor it to the different situations so that is not always something that can act as a block or a barrier to receiving services?
Yes, thank you again for that question as well. Actually, we learned that, yes, it's not a blocker. We just came back last night from a briefing with the police department, and even they were sharing that even in cases when they respond by themselves without us being there, it helps their communication and relationship with the community members when they start talking about a program, because it gives them an additional resource. And so when perhaps somebody is in a crisis and they're trying to de-escalate, when police officers often start talking about like, hey, would you like to be connected with our human services staff? And it seems like that's one way in which community members are really responsive and hearing yes. So from that perspective, we haven't seen blockers, and even times when our staff respond together. Both police and human services staff do a wonderful job in de-escalating and communicating with the community members, so we really have not seen a detriment to that.
Okay, thank you. I appreciate that. I'll turn the table back over to others if they have questions.
Councilmember DeMichelle, do you have any questions right now? I have a question.
No,
Oh,
not right now.
Thank you. I have a question. So the housing program has been running, it started at the beginning of 2023?
In July. We
July
launched
of
it mid-July, 17th actually, yes.
So it's been operational for how many months?
About 8 months now.
8 months. Okay. And how much has it cost?
Great question. We set aside $700,000 for 2023 and $900,000 for 2024. That includes the operations, and that includes also the lease, so the capital. We've been under budget for both of those. The biggest cost is, of course, the lease, which is about $27,000 per month. That includes taxes. And then, of course, the staffing. And for that, we have 3 FTEs. So we are under budget on both years. First year, of course, we were, because we just started in July. And so we were about at 40% of our budget. And so right now, for the second year in February, we continue to be under budget, but it's too early to.
Sure.
Yeah.
So 8 months of 3 staffers and 1 point. What I'm trying to do is trying to get a sense of how much we're spending per equivalent year, because the reason I was thinking about it was the number that had drawn my attention, that draws many people's attention, is that the cost to create permanent housing for housing the unhoused is I know in Seattle is $50,000 a year per person, right? So I was trying to figure out in my head and I'm usually pretty good at doing orders of magnitude in my head, but I'm just not today. Trying to figure out how this compares, right? We've had 23 people total over the course of 8 months. You said 2,000 FTE, or I mean 2,000 nights, which is 5.5 FTE years over 8 months. So that would be the equivalent of 8 or 9 people averaged over that time, right? If I'm getting my math right.
I was going through another math in my head. I was trying to do that. So I'm thinking.
And you maybe don't have to answer it right this
Right, and I can put those
I'm-
numbers together
yeah,
for
I'm
you more
interested-
specifically.
Yeah, I'm interested in knowing how this program compares to other options that are out there. And I realize there aren't necessarily other options in the city of Issaquah.
Right.
But I'm just curious, right, how that compares to that $50,000 per year per person number.
Yes, would love to follow up with you on that, and we'll get you the number. Looks like Jeff would like to.
I just wanted to add, great question, Councilmember Martz, Chair Martz. Jeff Watling, Parks and Community Services Director. Great comp, and I think as we look at those comps, we have to understand this program is investing both in bricks and mortar, right? So rather than building our own facility, we're utilizing the partnership with Motel 6. So in a way, the bricks and mortar comp is the rental fee. We're also, a big part of this investment, and Monica said it so well in the stories, is those 3 staff. It's not just housing these individuals. It's how do we bridge to permanent housing? And that doesn't just happen. And so those comps are a really good question. I think we'd want to make sure we're comping both the cost to build something, but then the programmatic investment to really help an individual get from A to B. So we can work on that.
And it's very exciting to see so many of those positive outcomes, by the way. And I don't know how that compares to programs they run in Seattle or Bellevue or any other places, but it's very, very exciting to see that there's been some good outcomes from the program.
Thank you for that. We'll follow up then with the exact numbers.
Other Councilmember Joe?
Well, I'll just close out my portion of comments, just saying that I am interested in exploring options for this program post-pilot stage. Answer to question number 1. Answer to question number 2, I think we've heard some things that the administration and staff are exploring to try to make sure we're delivering services to the people that are in need where they are at that particular moment. Some people are ready to get back into housing and a structure. Others just need, some counseling for substance abuse or other issues, and that's got to be done as step 1 to get to step 2 and step 3. So I really appreciate the approach that our human services team takes, and I don't have any suggestions for any additional operational consideration or capital consideration, but just say that our old motto used to be Issaquah, a place where people care, and I think that this program exemplifies that on a daily basis. Thank you.
Council Deputy President DeMichelle?
So are we in the comment section now or questions? Do we still need to do public input and then comment?
Clerk, do we have any members of the public?
We do not have any virtual members of the public in attendance at the moment, Chair Martz.
Okay, and we just have staff and members here. All right, then I think then we are safe to go straight to deliberation.
All right. So weighing in on the last question about the emergency housing program, yes, for me at least, there is strong interest in exploring options for this program going forward. I think there's several things I want to say about it. First of all, I have appreciated the fact that our residents can go on the city website and follow the progress of this pilot program. And I've been doing that, and also the emails that we've received from staff have been very helpful in understanding the progress over time. I appreciate the fact that it took us a long time to find the right staff for this program, and I think that's one of the challenges we need to acknowledge, that it took a while to get this program up and running. But I think a very carefully put together project, and one that as we're going along, we're learning from not our mistakes, but learning how to do it better and better as we go along. I know that the cost per person is going to be an issue. It's something that we need to communicate with our public with very carefully. But I think we need to put this in the bigger context. Homelessness has been growing for at least the last 30 years with very little resources put into it and a lot of quick fixes that different councils and different government agencies have tried to impose. And this is not a quick fix. This is going really deep with the people who are involved in participating in the program and absolutely giving them the kind of support that they need. I especially was taken tonight by Monica's reference to the healthcare needs of these individuals. And many of them have gone without medical care for a long time, and how that, of course, impacts their ability to work and to even access, full-time housing and so forth. So this program is not a quick fix. This program is going deep and making a big difference in the lives of the people who are participating. And I think it is well worth the investment we're making in it. So yes, I would like to see if this is a program that the full council would be willing to support. And again, the money is coming out of that 0.1% sales tax that we captured a couple of years ago, and this is exactly the kind of program that I was interested in supporting when we did that capture, when we took that vote for that 0.1%. Serving the people of Issaquah that are very much in need of services right here in our community. So yes, strong support. In regard to the strategic plan and the comprehensive plan elements, I don't have any other changes that I would like to see. I think both of those, I thought the comprehensive plan elements were really well done, very, very well thought out. And I appreciated the focus on clarifying a lot of the language in the element for the comprehensive plan. And I don't have any other suggestions for the strategic plan. So I think just a high five to staff for the very good work that they've done. Thank you.
Thank you. And regarding the emergency housing program, yes, I would like to see us continue it beyond the pilot stage, and yeah, looking at special operational or capital models looks like a good idea. You have what you were looking for on this item.
I think so. Thank you so much for your input. We appreciate all your support.
Thank you for the presentation tonight and from the whole team.
Thank you.
Next up, we have ID 1558 City Arts Program with Amy Dukes, our Cultural Arts Manager.
Good evening, council members. Thank you for having me. I'm just patient. So thank you for having me. I'm Amy Dukes, the Cultural Arts Manager for the city. And the purpose of my visit tonight is just to provide a revenue and programming update for the overall arts program. I realize we were here last month giving you an update on the arts granting, but this will be a little bit more comprehensive about the entire program, including our revenue. And we don't have a specific question really heading into this, but wanted to give the update that we had promised quite a long time ago about our revenue. Admissions tax was very dramatically impacted during the pandemic and the theater's closure. So we had promised that we would come back and kind of report on that. We have a full year of data to share with you, so I wanted to give that sort of as we head into the budgeting process for 25 and 26. And just very quickly, high-level overview of the arts program. It's been around for 30-plus years. We have 11 commission members, 1 full-time staff member, myself as of January of 2023. And we are funded through 2 different sources. One is that 5% admissions tax on for-profit theaters, and the other is a 0.5% on the city capital projects that are eligible. So not all city capital projects are eligible, but for those that are. And then the total budget for 2024 is $568,066. That does include the full-time staff as well as professional services in addition to the programs and granting. So here's the graph that I wanted to share. This just shows you kind of the trajectory of admissions tax 2017 to last year. We did hit kind of a high number in 2018 at over $335,000 in admissions tax, and that was at a time when we had both the Highlands Regal as well as Cinnabar. So you'll notice that in 2019, with the closure of Cinnabar, that went down. And then you see that huge drop in 2020, and the theaters were closed for almost a year between 2020 and 2021. So we've slowly crept back, and last year's admissions tax came in at over $227,000, which was great. We're thinking that that was pretty good data for how we might be moving forward, although we know that that was actually a really big movie year with Barbie and Oppenheimer and Taylor Swift's movie and Beyonce's movie, so they won't probably all be quite that good. And then I also, for comparison, wanted to show you the graph of contributions from the capital improvement projects bit of revenue. And you can just tell that that is a very volatile source of revenue, so it's really dependent on what capital projects the city is doing that are eligible for arts funding. And really, these dollars tend to stay within the projects. So if they are projects that really lend themselves to having public art integration, we try to use these funds within the project. So for the arts program, we have different components of the program, and you can tell that arts granting, that program area that I came to you last month to tell you about what the Arts Commission was hoping to support, is about half of our program funding. We do about 1/3 of it goes to public art of all sorts, and then 10% to the Creative District, which is a relatively new program, and then programs and events under 5% of our budget. Those are very small part of our current offerings. So I wanted to go through really quickly each of the components and just kind of tell you the why of why we're doing it and what the impact is. So the arts grants are really intended to support a wide variety of cultural and arts opportunities for the community, and also to support our local arts organizations and artists and help them grow and thrive. We also want to include arts experiences in community celebrations. And we know that the impact of that investment is resulting in 119,000 plus they're not unique participants, but participants in arts and culture in Issaquah annually. Public art is a program that has grown a lot in the last few years. And the reason that we want to continue to invest in public art is because we know that it helps build Issaquah's unique sense of place and community pride, and that it, in the case of our newest public art installation, Jacob, Two Trees, that it really can help bolster cultural tourism. So again, our program has grown a lot for public art. We have almost 30 pieces of outdoor artwork. We have 6 community murals. We have a very large-scale indoor mosaic at the pool. We have sort of an immersive art experience at the skate park. We have our new enormous troll on the Rainier Trail. And we have almost 100 utility box wraps all throughout the community at 38 different locations. So that program was intended to really spread our art program throughout the community and have it be something that everyone could see when they're visiting. And then programs and events, again, a small area for the Arts Commission, or Arts Program, partially because we have been so small staffed and relied really on volunteer support. So annually, we do provide a chalk art festival to the community. This has provided an interesting opportunity for us to partner with the Human Services Division. They've been offering their resource fair during the chalk art festival. That's been a nice partnership. We've been hosting an annual film festival for many years. This was on hiatus during the pandemic, but came back last year. We are now working with a group of college students who are in various film schools across the country, but all Issaquah residents. And so we'll be having another film festival this summer. And then it was interesting to hear some of the things that the Human Services team was talking about, because they actually are supported by the arts program. So Welcoming Week, all of those cultural performances are supported by the arts program, as well as the exhibit that just took place this last weekend for Black History Month. Excuse me. And then we have a lot of opportunity for growth in this area. We would love to have more pop-up art making events. We'd love to have artists in residence and more art community celebration. And then another program, which is new for the arts program, is the Creative District. We were designated in 2020. And really, this has been a partnership with economic development and the arts program. But through this program, we have been able to bring over $135,000 of capital investment to the district, which is just great. And again, more opportunities for growth. We'd love to address community art making. And I wanted to share with you some data that we've collected, that we've taken part in a national economic impact survey this past year. So the East Side nonprofit arts and culture organizations and their audiences had over $100 million local economic impact. I'm so sorry. I think I'm allergic to something in this room. It always causes problems for my... Yes, please. Thank you. This room does not agree with me. Thank you. I'm good. And so this survey included data from Issaquah, Redmond, Bellevue, and Renton. So it's not even what we consider the whole East Side. This is really only 4 cities. But the economic impact was $100 million just in 2022. And another important note to make is that 2022 wasn't even a typical arts participation year. So I wanted to point that out. You can also see that the average visitor to an arts event is spending over $45 per event per person. And if they're coming from outside of our region, they're spending almost $91 per person per event. So investing in arts and culture is great for so many reasons, but it also does have an economic impact. And then I just wanted to address some opportunities that we see on the horizon. We really want to retain and grow our creative community and our creative economy. It's been a really rough time for our arts organizations and our local artists, and we want to do as much as we can to keep them here, to help them grow and thrive. We know, just like Human Services was saying, we have a space problem in Issaquah for our nonprofits, and we definitely have issues for community art making space that we would love to address in creative ways. One of those creative ways might be a collaboration with the school district to have better agreements to use their performing arts spaces and art making spaces. Strategic grant making. Every year the Arts Commission, as it goes through its grant making process, really tries to evaluate how they're making the grants and who is eligible and how we're addressing the needs of the community. And so there's lots of opportunity to go even more granularly and look at that more strategically. We would love to grow community events as the Human Services group mentioned, there's a desire to have cultural events in the community, and the arts program has a lot of contacts with a lot of those community groups. That might take additional staffing resources, but that's an area that is very possible for growth. Cultural tourism is also a great opportunity for growth. We know just from the Jacob Two Trees sculpture that people were willing to drive across, state lines or country lines to come visit a wooden sculpture on our Rainier Trail. So there's definitely growth opportunities there. And then really just the need to diversify our funding sources. So as you saw, the graphs that I showed previously, we don't think that we're going to get to where we previously were with our admissions tax. And we also know that, that those capital improvement project dollars just don't amount to a significant portion of our funding. So we've been pretty successful getting grants for special projects, but we know if we want to continue to grow, we're going to have to be creative about how we fund arts in Issaquah. And then because it is really relevant to this overall conversation, and I know you probably have heard about the Doors Open program, I just wanted to give you a quick overview of that. So that is a new sales tax, the 1/10 of 1% for King County that passed at the end of 2023. And it's estimated that it will bring $100 million additional dollars to arts and culture in King County annually. This will be administered through For Culture, and they are going to fold some of the funding mechanisms into existing programs. So their sustained support program, which they currently have in place, will have a lot larger giving amount. You can see it's estimated to be $36 million additional dollars. They're going to create a new public school cultural access program. For Culture and the county haven't really funded education or in-school education and arts programs. So that will be a new program that will bring over $10 million to the county. And then the free public access program will help get free admission and free participation so that residents can visit arts and culture organizations without spending money. Yeah.
I have a question about this slide.
Yeah.
So is it just coincidence that the public school cultural access number is 10.8 million and approximate total annual program funding is also 10.8 million? Those just happen to be the same number. What is total annual program funding?
Total annual program funding for each of the categories. So the new funding from Doors Open is estimated to be $100 million. And of that $100 million, 10.8 would go to the public school access and 10.8 would go to the free public access.
Oh, I'm sorry, when I saw total annual program funding, I thought that was a summary somehow across. That's just for the free public access.
Just for the free public access.
Got it. Do we have an estimate of what the direct impact, how much of this $100 million is Issaquah specific?
I don't have it tonight, but I am working on it because I think that is a really important number. And so I don't know if from the memo you kind of gleaned, but a lot of this money is going to go to arts and culture and science and heritage too, which is great, throughout the county. But they have a lot of restrictions on who can receive it. So the city will not, no municipalities can receive the funding. So the city arts program won't receive any of the Doors Open funding. And then you have to be a nonprofit, and you specifically have to be a 501c3. So quite a few nonprofits in our community are 501c4 or other types of nonprofits. So so there's that. And then you have to be arts, culture, science, or heritage focused, which for the arts program anyway, a lot of the things that we fund are organizations doing arts programming that are not arts focused. So I'm working on a number to find out like how much the program will impact the Issaquah community, but it certainly also depends on how these organizations apply for funding too. So it's an application process, so they won't just automatically be funded.
Sure. One of the reasons why I ask is the previous effort before this successful one that was not successful.
Right.
The Village Theater would have been a big winner. That was one where they identified where the money would have gone ahead of time, and Village Theater was a major East Side recipient. Will they likely be in the mix on this one as well?
Yes, so they're an example of an Issaquah-based organization that should stand to gain pretty significantly.
They're a C3, not a C4.
Mm-hmm. And there are other, I mean, I think this is a really good thing for Issaquah in general and the county. I know, everyone has their thoughts on the sales tax increases. But this will also be available to the zoo because they're considered a science organization. It will be available to the fish hatchery for the same reason. And it will be available to the history museums. So we do have local organizations that stand to gain quite a decent amount in funding, which is great.
When you say available to the fish hatchery, do you mean fish? Because the hatchery
yes, I'm
is
sorry.
a state.
Fish.
Yeah,
yes.
okay.
Yeah, not
Right.
the fish hatchery.
Okay.
Fish. Correct. Thank you for that clarification. Exactly.
Gotcha.
So I am hoping that I can share that with you all pretty soon in terms of kind of available dollars based on budget sizes. And then there's a few more categories. So building for equity, which is a capital investment in facilities and equipment. Again, those groups would be eligible for that. And then a new initiative to kind of address county-wide issues in the arts and culture and science and heritage. And then a new program called Launch, which will really focus on emerging organizations. So I also think that the Launch category could be a really good support for local grassroots efforts in Issaquah. So I just wanted to share that with you because I know that it's kind of, out there and everyone's kind of wondering how it's going to impact the local community. So I think, it will impact the eligible organizations. We will certainly do everything we can to provide technical assistance to help them get the maximum they can out of the program. But we know there's lots of groups that are just simply not going to be eligible. So we'll have to work to figure out how to partner. So just to reiterate, my purpose here tonight is just to give you an update. I'm so sorry that I'm having
You're doing fine. You're powering through it very successfully.
No, I'm good. I do think I'm allergic to something in this room. And then direction needed. Again, there's not a specific question we're hoping to answer. It's just really wanting to give you kind of a state of the program, given that we are, I guess, post-pandemic or whatever we want to call it, and that our revenue is sort of back to its, or at its new normal, and just to kind of inform as we head into a budgeting process. So please feel free to give me your questions, and Jeff is here too, who might want to say something.
You want to add something before we go to questions? Dr.
Amy,
Watling,
way
you're
to
always welcome.
power through that. Wow. No, just thank you for the conversation tonight. Amy won't toot her own horn, and she can't necessarily breathe right now, but boy, as we've come out of the pandemic, our arts is the little engine that could. And I want to thank you, Council, for supporting Amy in her position to become a full-time staff, a 1.0 full-time in 2023. She does a lot. The Arts Commission does a lot. Arts is in a really exciting place right now in Issaquah. I think our intent for the conversation tonight and highlighting sort of what we're seeing looking ahead as we're working with administration and preparing the 25-26 budget. We just want to get some feedback from you in terms of, hey, is this the right direction? Is this the right scale we want to be heading? And if so, how do we sort of head into the 25-26 budget looking for sort of an operational target? So would love your feedback. Great job, Amy. Great job, Arts Commission. Thank you.
And I'm actually going to start with Councilmember DiMichele this time because I kept starting with you, Councilmember DiMichele.
My question is, I believe, if I'm reading my packet correctly, and I can't find it right now, but there was a recommendation from the administration that that we go ahead with a review of funding for the Arts Commission. And so I think my question is for City Administrator Bob Quitz. When and how would that happen? And yes, I support it thoroughly, but can we have a few more details about how we get ready for the budget decisions around the funding of this program?
Thank you, Councilmember DiMichele. Well, tonight's the beginning of that. We're looking for council feedback. Amy did an excellent job of reviewing the component parts to this. What we're trying to do is identify what areas need additional attention. We've begun our own internal review of this, and so we certainly have our own ideas at a staff level, but we want the council's feedback. We will, I think, begin talking with the Arts Commission later in the spring, early summer with that. Plus, we also just have to balance all the other options for revenue citywide. There's competing factors, of course, not just arts. The 1/10 sales tax is also a wild card in this. As Amy indicated, we really don't have specific numbers. It's not designed, it's not per capita. So there's not a piece that's just going to come to Issaquah. So we have to work closely with our county partners as they roll out the granting programs, because I think that will have an impact on how we look at future budget as well, what we can leverage, what our organizations and the community can leverage from that addition. So tonight's the beginning of that, and look forward to the council's input this evening, and we'll continue to talk about this through the later spring and into the summer.
Thanks.
Does that answer your question, Council Deputy President? All right. Councilmember Joe.
Thank you. First, Amy Dukes, thanks for all of your hard work. When I talk to people, whether it's in the Creative District or other nonprofits about art, your name comes up and is favorably mentioned over and over again. So thank you for all the hard work you're doing. In your presentation on page 13, I think you had the picture of the blue heron as it's just off of Front Street on the subway wall. The words of the prophets are written on the subway wall. Sorry about that. But the heron's there, and that's part of the festival street, right? And it's bisected by Front Street. We don't do the art necessarily because we're not artists. We don't build the housing because we're not in the construction industry. But the funding is, as I see it, is designed to set the platform so that people can come in and do creative things in there. Has there been a discussion as to how we can better use or utilize that festival street? We've done lighting there. We've done the great art on the ground and on the side of the wall there. Could you give a little more color to the conversations that you've been having about how to better utilize that space?
Yeah, thank you, Councilmember Joe. That's a great question. We have been talking about it, especially the Creative District and the Creative District Advisory Board. As you pointed out, this is right kind of in the heart of the Creative District. And we would love to see better activation and more use of the festival street. I think initially it was intended that that street could be closed off for street fairs and other things, and we haven't really seen that happen. So we've been talking with the Creative District Advisory Board on ways that we might incentivize use of that. I was actually just talking with Economic Development today about a possible kind of special permit that we might provide for the festival street, much like a block party kind of thing to encourage. And then in terms of that strategic grant making piece, that's another area that if that's something we really wanted to focus on, we could pull that out as a special interest area to take proposals to activate. So lots of possibilities, and especially as the community has gotten back into the rhythm of gathering as a community, I think now is a good time to really look at that. That's great that you're talking about that.
The side that is more to the east could be closed off a little more easily than the other side. You know, in conjunction with something that's going on with the depot, you could have perhaps some type of art event in the area around the Heron spilling into the depot and make it a joint event of some sort. I used to work for a company that had an artist in residence program. And this might just be a artist weekend program where we shut off that side of the street there in conjunction with something the Historical Society might be doing, and put out spaces just like we do for Salmon Days and let the artists come and show off their art or do art there. We talked about lack of space for our artists, so I could see a sunny July weekend where we have artists there that are doing art. The Historical Society is able to bring in people to talk about their items, and so I don't know how we encourage a nonprofit or another organization to ask for grant funding that would make that happen, but I see that we've set the table, so to speak, to allow that as a possibility.
Yes, definitely. I like your vision. We have been thinking about the possibilities for pop-up art maker space and community art making space in spaces like the train depot. And it's also really heartening to see that there are community organizations that are starting to use the train depot as an art space. So there's a literary arts program that's going to start on a monthly basis there, and there's a play that's actually performing the importance of being earnest in the train depot for a limited run. So yes, I think we have to get creative about our spaces since we don't have a lot of dedicated space, but we can make art happen anywhere, and that's a great opportunity.
Yeah, and just looking forward a little bit farther as we think about the changes or revamping that we're doing to Veterans Memorial Park and making that an additional space that could work with the arts program and the Historical Society together and create some synergies there. You know, has there been some discussions for the 2 or 3 years out where we're trying to integrate that park as well?
Great, thank you for mentioning that, and there definitely has. So we, I think on one of the slides I showed you, we were recently awarded, which we need to come to council to accept, $112,000 for placemaking and public art in the plazas projects. And the artist that is working on the design for those is also considering future designs for the area in between the plazas, which would be right there in front of the depot park.
Thank you. I like how the Arts Commission and you are thinking in terms of bigger ideas and ways that we can provide a platform for our artists in the community. Thank you.
Thank you.
Spirit of Radio or Limelight? Your song reference. Words of the Province are written on the stadium wall.
Sound of Silence.
Oh, I was thinking of Rush.
You want me to sing?
I think Rush uses the same lyric.
No.
Probably a callback to Simon and Garfunkel.
Okay, all right.
Cultural references, they're important. A couple of questions. Creative District. A couple of things around that. We've got 135K, which includes 112K grant for Creative District placemaking. So what's that gonna be like?
Yeah, so right now we have an artist that's designing concepts for the plazas, pedestrian park and the senior center plaza for art integration. And she has been she met with the history museums to get more context on Issaquah history. She is actually a former resident of Issaquah, so it's quite familiar, but also met with the Snoqualmie tribe to talk about other influences in our region, and is planning to bring concepts for that project to the Arts Commission next month. So,
placemaking meaning signage, right?
Placemaking meaning, in this case, it's artful placemaking. So art that speaks to where you are and gives you context to where you are, what was here, what the history and what the community is all about.
Okay. Around a creative district, is there any thought to how do you create some how do you create some more enduring like businesses? Like I think of a creative district and I think a nucleus of businesses and a growing nucleus of businesses. And how do you nurture that? It's great to do some of these one-offs and
Right.
those are important as well, but some persistence in some of these things?
Yeah, so I think, we were designated in 2020, kind of right at a really challenging time to be designated as a creative district. And so the first things that we did were really in that sort of placemaking and public art and murals, because those were easy things for us to do, given the fact that we actually lost a lot of creative businesses during the pandemic. So we've also been working with economic development, doing focus groups of our arts community and actually artisans and individual artists to try to figure out what can we do to encourage more creative businesses in the creative district. And it's kind of slow work. It's hard because not all of the retail spaces and commercial spaces want to rent to creatives. They're, concerned that they're messy or that they'll,
Right, if
they'd
somebody has a
much rather
kiln,
have an accountant in
yeah.
their space.
If somebody has a kiln, that can be a hard sell.
So they have unique needs that, don't always make them the ideal tenant, but we've been working to try to ease some of those restrictions and talking to business owners and building owners. So I am happy to report we have quite a few new creative businesses entering the creative district in 2020, end of 23, beginning of 24. You'll see 3 new creative businesses opening on Front Street in the next few days, actually. So it's kind of slow work and a little bit labor intensive, but we're very aware that there's a need for space, and we're trying to partner people up and get conversations going to help groups and people find spaces.
Okay. And then the last comment that I had on it was, I'm hoping there might be some way. I know that there's monies, in the for culture. You mentioned monies going to the school district and partnering on youth education, but thinking slightly outside the school district model. Some of the impetus for the garage was finding things for young people to do who aren't served by the traditional. So you want to get into Stanford? What do you put on your resume? Sort of methodology. And I wonder if there might be similar opportunities in the arts, not necessarily partnering with the garage, but partnering elsewhere. Because a lot of creative kids, it can be tough being a creative kid, right? And seeing if there are opportunities for the city to provide some opportunities, partnering either with businesses or some of the things that we can do as a municipality, again, to provide more opportunities comparable to, but again, not necessarily in collaboration with the garage, but that same idea of more things for our young people to do. And the arts is an amazing opportunity for these artistic kids that may not have otherwise good opportunities. I want to say generally, I love all of this. I think that in the entire time that I've been on council, we've seen some ups and downs in the local arts community. We've seen some times where it looked like we were building that critical mass, and where that critical mass has decreased a little bit. But it's really one of the ways that we're a real city. When people tell me, "Oh, you guys are a suburb," no, we're a city. We're at 40 some odd thousand people, but we're a real city, and having an art scene is part of that. And I also think that having the arts, when done right, celebrate a sort of timelessness that is often lost today, and so many people so dwell on microaggressions and social media and all that kind of stuff. And art, when it's transcendent, can really move people beyond all that and inspire. So I'm just entirely positive on all of these efforts and eager to see us continue to make progress. Having you be engaged full-time since 2023 is a big part of that. Having a full-time person. You've served the city so well over so many years in part-time. Now to see you be here full-time is a big part of that equation. So, do we have any other thoughts before we go on?
Chair Martz, did you want to, we have no virtual attendees, but there may be members of the public in the room that would wish to address the committee?
Okay, but before you do that, then let me just read my little spiel. 1 second. So we are going to take public comment, but before we do that, I apologize. Let me just get the form here. Public comment are an important part of the public process. We take them seriously and factor them into the decisions we make. During audience comments, members of the public are invited to address the council regarding matters that are directly related to city programs, projects, services, or events. Anyone from the public who wishes to comment will have the opportunity to do so. Please direct comments to the whole council and not individuals. While this is not a question and answer session, we will contact you to follow up if needed. Recognized, unmute your microphone for virtual attendees or step up to the lectern, as someone has already done. In person, state your name, address, and relationship to the city, i.e. resident, property owner, or business owner. Speak clearly and pause frequently and limit comments to 5 minutes. And we have no virtual attendees? I don't have
That is correct, Chair
I
Martz.
don't have to do that part. Personal attacks, obscene language, derogatory remarks, and disruptive behavior such as shouting, booing, clapping, and stomping feet will not be permitted. If the speaker is out of order, the presiding officer will direct the speaker to return to his or her seat, or for virtual, well, we don't have virtual attendees. If a speaker does not comply, the presiding officer may take a recess to restore order. If disruption to the meeting occurs and order cannot be restored, the presiding officer may proceed to use one of the options provided for in RCW 42.30.050 to ensure orderly continuation of the meeting. Again, public comments, written and verbal, are an important aspect of the public process. The city takes comments seriously, and we thank members of the public for taking the time to address us during our meeting.
Hi, it's nice to see you, and thank you for all the support of the arts. I'm Rachel Wright. I'm the co-chair of the Arts Commission, and I'm also one of the members of the Creative District Advisory Board, which is a great place to be. And so first, just on behalf of the Arts Commission, I want to thank Amy for all the work she does. She's an incredible advocate, and I love seeing how she uses data to tell the story and to make the point that arts are a really big part of the economy and our creative economy. So just a few points I wanted to help reinforce. One, especially in the work we do in the Creative District, we're becoming more and more aware of how important it is to make art part of policy. I think examples of how we can make art a part of policy in terms of getting an actual permit for art. You know, the troll is not permitted under an art permit. I think the troll is actually a sign, you know, so we don't have the appropriate mechanisms to help encourage more public art. Another example is how we want to work in the Creative District specifically into getting more businesses to actually put art on their property. So you don't have to be a creative business to be a participant in the Creative District. So an example we're working on right now is the new Brown Bear, which is coming in, and that's really at the gateway of our Creative District. Well, there's a long blank wall that needs mitigation. Why can't we have a mural be a part of that and let Brown Bear help support and be a part of our creative community? So as topics come up, I just want people keeping an eye out for how can we integrate the arts into policy to make it easier for people to participate, easier for people to contribute, easier to, you know, for people to overall get engaged, because I think there's lots of opportunity. And then the last piece is, you know, I think we are starting to see how valuable it is just in society to have art being that means of bringing people together. We are seeing there's studies showing that it's what makes people come together and gather. They have conversations, they get out of isolation, and all of those things combined lead to a healthier population, healthier mental health, spiritual health, well-being. And so the more we can do around the arts in Issaquah, the stronger we'll be as a community. Thank you.
Thank you. Does anybody else wish to speak? Thank you again. Further, any further comments first?
Just
Councilmember Joe?
great work. Keep it up. Go forth and conquer, please. Thank you.
Thanks very much.
Council Deputy President. I'm saying that wrong, aren't I? It's Deputy Council President DiMichele.
Yeah, that's okay. So I just want to echo what Rachel said about and yourself, how pleased we are to have Amy as our arts liaison, and she's doing great work. I hope that one of the things that I would maybe like to see in the future is if we could do a look back, is how has the city grown, and over time, how is that revenue from the tax, admission tax, tracked with the growth in our community? I have a feeling that it's probably lagging quite a bit behind. I think the Arts Commission started in around 1988, if I remember correctly from my packet. I was on that first Arts Commission. So, and I'm sure that our revenue at that point was very, very small, but the city council had the foresight to create the admissions tax. And that has supported the Arts Commission for a great many years now without too much of a change. And so, and I think there is an upper limit to how much we can increase that admissions tax as well. You know, we don't want to make that a terrible burden to our venues. So reviewing how that has tracked in relationship to our growth, I think would be, if we could get the data that goes back that far, would be a good exercise for the council to see how spending has tracked with our population growth. And so I'm very interested in how we can creatively think about additional revenue. I think I asked the question a long time ago, do we have the arts program that we want, or do we have the arts program that we can afford? And I hope that we'll come up with a vision. I see a lot of vision already. I think we have a great field of information to start with, and I'm looking forward to having a report back to the council about future growth of the arts program. I concur with everything that Chair March said about Issaquah really loves the arts, and I agree with Rachel's comments. It is a great way to bring our community together across the vast area that is Issaquah. The arts are one way that we all come together into spaces to be creative together. So I think it has great value beyond just the our return on investment. So thanks to Amy for the great presentation, and I'm looking forward to future discussions. Thank you.
Thank you so
Thank
much.
you, Deputy Council President. And in terms of 1558, does the administration have the feedback it was looking for this evening? I'm seeing a head nod, but we're not done with the arts yet. Next up, we have 1584, Comprehensive Plan Update, Draft Arts and Culture Element Policies with Kristen Leeson, live and remote.
Oops. 1 second. There we go. All right. Good evening. I apologize that I am not there in person. That was my intention, but life happened. So here I am. So good evening. So I feel like I could just say, you know what, Amy did a fantastic job. So my job here is done. But I will continue. So we are here to talk about the arts, what used to be the cultural element, the arts and cultural element. It is part of our 2015 comprehensive plan periodic update, or I'm sorry, our 2024 comprehensive plan periodic update. So tonight we just want to review it with you, review some of the new things that we're adding to it, and then have you all provide any feedback on the draft that we've given you. So some things to consider. Are there any considerations, additional considerations that the Arts Commission needs to study or consider prior to their recommendation to City Council? Are there any additional topics for staff to consider when making final edits? And are the goals and policies deemed implementable? In the past, I think the arts and cultural element has been a little higher level, and we're trying to bring it back down to give it some teeth. So we want to make sure that you all believe that it's implementable. So you may know that this is not a required element by the state. We added it in 1999 because, as we've talked about here, it's important to acknowledge it. It's important to acknowledge arts, and it's grown, and it's important. Our city has grown. It's important to recognize our diversity in different cultures and those celebrations as well. So the existing element focuses really on supporting art and artisans, funding programs, encouraging art and culture and events, and promoting community diversity and participation. Pretty high level. We are trying to make some significant changes. So some of these include, one is aligning goals and policies with the arts and culture strategic direction of the Arts Strategic Plan. So some of the directions, not some of them, the directions in that plan are to integrate arts and policies into systems, foster the arts as a primary part of our community, increase capacity to meet growing community needs. And Amy talked a lot about that, and that it's not just, it's where to show, where to have exhibits, where to hold events, but it's also where to create the art and create the music and so forth. Celebrate the cultures, expand art access throughout the community, and include celebrating our diverse and multicultural communities. Another one is to bring our certified creative district into focus. So the last time this was updated was in 2015, and we did not have a creative district. So that adds a whole new element to the plan. And then lastly, to acknowledge the community need for space, art making, and community gathering, like I just talked about. So I want to note that Amy and the Arts Commission, actually, they have done the whole rewrite of this with a little bit of tweaking afterwards, but they put the work in. They did this back in October and November. The Planning Policy Commission saw it back in January, on January 25th, and they liked it. So I think they kind of had the same questions you did, but they really liked it. So the first new one is to promote our creative district. I don't think I need to talk anymore about that one. Maybe really shorten my presentation. The next would be to examine and adopt a process to encourage the integration of public art, murals, and elements into the built environment. And by adopt a process, right now it happens, but there's not necessarily a line that we follow to make sure that that happens the same way every time. And so we need to establish a process, create an engaging public arts master plan that's integrated with parks, trails, and public spaces, and then incentivize artwork through development regulations as a component of new development. You can't require it for private, but we would like to find a way to incentivize it for private developments through our land use code. Continue providing landmark designation and protection services with King County. We actually didn't have that in there. So we're proposing to put that in there. Establish partnerships with different cultural organizations and potentially match available facilities with needs. Encourage the development and adaptive reuse of community accessible art studios for exhibitions, co-working, and potentially libraries. So somebody can say, I have easels and paints, and you know how libraries work. So libraries for that sort of thing. Here's your blue heron again. It's a favorite. Conduct an evaluation every 5 years that measures the effectiveness of funding regulations and programs. And I believe that's sort of what Deputy Council President DiMichele was talking about, is to monitor this, see where our money's going and how much progress we're making. We're trying to do this with all of our elements. So really, that was fast. That's all I had. And these are our questions again about considerations for the Arts Commission, considerations for staff, and is this what you read, what's in your packet, is it implementable? So that's all I have. Thank you.
Do we have any questions before we move to deliberation? I see Councilmember Joe has his hand up.
Thank you. Thanks for that presentation. I had a question about proposed new policy E2 on page 12 of your presentation. Establish partnerships among cultural organizations to better match available facilities with needs. I was wondering if there was any conversation about how we can better make connections with our local tribes as well. The hatchery has some art that recognizes and honors our neighbors. And was that any part of the conversation, and can it be put as part of the new policies if we decide it's important, and how would we go about doing that? Thank you.
Sure. So I'm very happy that Amy said, despite her allergies, that she would still stay and answer some questions. But we did add coordination with Indigenous tribes and cultures in the plan this time, and it wasn't new. It was sort of an addition to. So yes, and Amy, I don't know if she wants to speak more to that or not.
Yeah, it was clarified and strengthened, I guess, in the wording, but not a new policy. But we feel really good, the arts program does, about the connections that we made through the creation of Jacob Two Trees and our collaboration with the tribe and the tribe's cultural team. So I'm really hoping to continue that work.
Thank you very much. That's great news. Please continue that work.
I have a question, which is, do we someplace in here talk about in our arts policy engaging our minority communities and making sure that we're tapping artists and artistic traditions from underrepresented communities within our larger community?
The element does not speak specifically to underrepresented communities. It speaks to different cultures and diversity, but that could certainly be clarified here.
Yeah, I'm thinking something specific. I mean, of course, you know, all sorts of different cultures. It's great to look in all sorts of different directions and all sorts of different cultural traditions for art. But I'm thinking specifically something that says, you know, we have such a huge South Asian and East Asian community here. And, you know, we've seen things like, you know, the art around, Persian art. There was a Persian art thing a couple of years ago. But having a policy, you know, on a 20-year horizon, just to make sure that we engage those communities to build art, to make sure that our substantial and really vibrant communities here get reflected in the art that we put together.
Thanks for that
Great,
question.
yeah, we can absolutely.
Oh, sorry, Kristen. I stepped right on top of you. I would just add to that we do have the essence of that in one of our strategic directions for the arts program, and that those strategic directions really inform the work, especially when we're doing grant making, to try to make sure that we're covering that direction as we're investing in arts and culture for the community. And I think that the current roster of arts grants is very representative of lots of different cultures in our community, but it's something that the Arts Commission is always thinking about when they're investing in our granting program. Another thing that we've done is to start to gather more data about who has created our public art collection, so that we at least understand who is represented in the collection and how we might evolve that to be more representative. And the utility box program was one of the reasons that was another reason we wanted to do that program, because it allowed us to get a lot more community artists out into the community.
Sure.
So that one is more representative.
I just think if you think about a 10-year time horizon, what's changed in 10 years, I think you're seeing that critical mass of South Asian and East Asian arts on the East Side, the kinds of things that Seattle has done so effectively, like with the Seattle Asian Art Museum, which is just a gem of a museum. You're seeing more and more of that on the East Side, and in this last 10 years, seeing more and more those communities as being just an amazing resource, and wanting to see our arts programs reflect that, as well as our Hispanic communities, and really all of our communities, but those two, South Asian, East Asian, and Hispanic, because there's such a large communities that, honestly, from the dais here, I often don't hear from enough and see examples of enough in our community, not because our city isn't open to it, but because we, you know, could do more to proactively reach out.
Yeah, and art is a great way to reach out, for sure. So thank you for that comment.
Do we want to, I offer public, any other further public comment? Nope. Okay. Do we have any other deliberation on this subject? We all talked out on art. Russell's got his thumb up. Deputy Council President has her thumb up. I will ask City Administrator if he has the feedback he was looking for this evening. I've got a head nod. So thank you, Kristen and Amy and the teams. And with that, we will move on to, oh no, our last item of the evening. ID 1662, Lodging Tax Advisory Committee Grant Recommendations. And Pharrell is participating remotely, and I think is going to provide support. And our city administrator is going to pinch hit.
He's rebounded from his
excellent
from his sickness a little bit. So Pharrell
all right,
asked to just go ahead and make the presentation.
Pharrell, glad you're feeling better. Take us
Yeah,
into this.
thank you, council members. Let me share my screen really quick here. I hope you can see my screen.
We can. Thank you. Although it's not full screen, it's like we're also seeing the preview off on the side. And one more, I think if you switch the primary and secondary, there's a way to switch over. Well, there we go. We can make do with that one.
From the beginning.
No.
There you go.
No.
That was fine.
There.
Okay.
Better?
Looks great.
Okay, I'm sorry. Today, I was supposed to come in person, but again, in the morning, I woke up feeling different sort of, my body was not mine. So I had to take some medication in the morning and have some rest. And unfortunately, around afternoon, I began feeling better. Hopefully by tomorrow, the following day, I'll be okay.
Excellent. Glad you're here.
So the purpose of tonight's presentation is to present the 2024 LTAC grant recommendation as proposed by the LTAC committee. So the direction needed is administration seeks direction from the Services, Safety and Parks Council Committee for the award and allocation of the 2024 LTAC grants. A little background of LTAC is the City Council adopted the ordinance number 2192 in 1998 to establish LTAC. And again, in 2022, the City Council approved $50,000 for each year from Lodging Tax Fund to fund tourism-related initiative in 2023 and 2024. Again, specifically, LTAC allows funding requests for up to $10,000 to support 3 initiatives that I'll speak later in the slides. Then again, it's also important to mention that in last year, November 8th meeting, LTAC adopted it's not metric, it's supposed to be matrix for lodging tax application review, of which I'll also expound more on the matrix in the next few slides. So here are the new matrix that we came up with, and they were adopted during our November 8th meeting last year. So under the first matrix, we had project impact. So we kind of tried to look what are the tangible and intangible benefits for the initiative to the local community. Then again, the next matrix, we have overnight guests. So how a tourism grant will result in increases to people staying overnight, traveling 50 miles away or more, or coming from another state for the initiative. So, and again, another thing that we are looking at is organization capability. So under organization capability, it encompasses competence, capacity, and expertise of individual or team. The reason why I came up with this matrix is in the recent past, we get that we recommend funding to different organizations. They end up not using the fund coming back to us and claiming that they don't have capacity. So we had to flesh out this specifically to the application so that they can try to let us know about their capability to drive the event that they are asking funds for. And of course, most importantly is marketing, of which was also awarded 20 points. And again, in marketing, we were trying to look at how are you going to market your initiative? Because again, the aim of this is we want to draw people from 50 miles away from Issaquah. Then again, it's also important to mention the diversity, equity, and inclusion. And the city is a big champion of diversity, equity, and inclusion. So we also wanted to have a sense what your organization is doing to advance the principles of diversity, equity, and inclusion. Of course, also we had the other matrix, we had degree of match. And other degree of match, we are looking at, do you have matching funds to commit to this project? Or rather, what other sources of revenue will be used to support this project? Then also we had the last matrix here, we had partnership and collaboration. So we wanted to kind of have a feeling of how, or rather what plans the organization has to collaborate with other organizations in the community. And again, what are some of these organizations that you want to collaborate with, and how are you going to collaborate with this organization? Do you also have volunteer involvement into this initiative or project? And a little bit bonus point in the middle, we tend to also to look at it into different angles. We were looking at applications that are they going to be held off season, and are they also having a multi-day events, that is 2, 3, 4 days events? And again, also it's important also to mention the innovation. Has a project like this been done before? Then again, if so, has the project taken a unique direction from other similar events? So this is the new metrics that we came up with to kind of guide the ELTA committee in scrutinizing and accessing these applications. Interesting. So in this slide here, we have our hotels and motels. And again, currently they collect the city 1% share of the tax to pay any part of the cost of tourism promotion, acquisition of tourism related facilities, or operation of tourism related facilities. And again, Fairfield Inn opened this year in January, so we anticipate the revenue to increase due to their opening this year, of which they anticipate doing a ribbon cutting, just a big launch, either in March or April. I will update once we have those information. So what are the initiatives supported by ELTA grant? We have 3 initiatives supported by this grant. And number 1 is marketing to visitors from outside the area by an Issaquah business or not-for-profit organization, kind of to encourage travelers to Issaquah from visitors greater than 50 miles away. The second initiative supported is operation of non-profit owned tourism-related facilities like the Village Theatre and name them. And the last, we are looking at marketing and operation of special events and festival designed to attract tourism. So these are the guiding initiatives that they are fleshed out with the state regulation too. So we kind of build on this in developing our matrix. In 2024 ELTA applicants, we had 14 applicants. And it is also important to mention that among the 14 applicants, 4 of them were new applicants. So the 14 applicants, they requested a total of $171,300,000 request. And again, if we compare this with the last year figures, this is 148% increase. But again, as I'm still in this slide, it's also important to mention that one of the applicants was found ineligible for the ELTA grant. So we fleshed that applicant out. This slide shows the 2024 LTAC recommended applicants. So the LTAC committee recommended 10 applicants to be awarded a total of $50,000. And this graph shows how the LTAC grant was awarded to these applicants. And of course, it's also it is prudent enough to mention that the committee decided to award Greater Issaquah Chamber of Commerce and Village Theatre the full ask based on their applications that they submitted. And again, they narrowed down to this other organization trying to allocate them based on how well did they read the matrix, fill in the application, and how did they come up with different components for these LTAC grants. So options here, we have 3 options, and the first option is kind of accept the LTAC recommendation as is. Then the second option is select different organizations from the list or change the recommended funding amounts for the recommended organizations. Then the last option here is take no action. The recommended funding will not be allocated. So recommendation is administration recommends allocating the 2024 LTAC grants as proposed by the LTAC committee. So timing and next step. We realize that this is a yearly cycle grant, so we tend to kind of open this application in January 2nd, 2024. And we had 1 month application because the application was closed in January 31st, 2024. So within that 1 month, we used different channels of communication to disseminate the information that the LTAC grant is opened. We use our e-news, we use the comms, and we use visual partners to kind of disseminate this information to different organizations. Then in Feb 14th, 2024, was the LTAC committee sit down to kind of review, go through this application and come up with a recommendation list. And today, Feb 27th, 24, the presentation, the recommended applicants by the LTAC was to be presented to the SSP Council Committee. Then we anticipate in March 4th, the grant will go to the council meeting for approval. Then December 30th, 2024 is project completed. So it's also important to mention that within the 1 year span for this grant, there are some initiatives that happen in the middle of the year, January. So we are not waiting until December. Once the initiatives are completed, this applicants send invoices to us for reimbursement. So the direction needed here is we are seeking direction from the Services, Safety and Park Council Committee for the award and allocation of the 2024 LTAC grants. And that's the end of the application. Unless there's any questions, I'm happy to answer any question.
Questions? Councilmember Joe.
First, Pharrell, thank you for all your hard work. As many of you know, I'm the chair of the LTAC committee, and we did move the application up a month to January, and that was certainly a chunk of additional work that Pharrell and his team were able to take right in stride and get those applications out. We wanted to give an ample opportunity for the organizations to have events earlier in the year that could receive funding. Pharrell, one of the questions that I had is we've been talking about equity and inclusion in your presentation, and one of the organizations that's in there I'd like you to highlight a little bit is the Issaquah Highlands Association and their Grub and Groove event, and how that event reaches out to some of the communities that Chair Martz touched upon during the festivals throughout the year and the plan that they have.
Okay, that's a good question. So we realize that. Sorry, can you hear me now?
Yes, we can hear you fine.
Yeah, that's a good question. And again, when we are looking at these applications, I think it's important to mention different organizations didn't look at the piece of diversity, equity, and inclusion. But one of the applicants stand out was Highland, and of course the Chamber and Village Theatre to kind of flesh out more how they're going to incorporate the diversity, equity, and inclusion. So again, if you look at the Highlands, since it's a one-day event, but again, they were funded because of the components of equity and inclusion that they had, and they kind of theme their event as Group Expo for All, leg grab for all. And again, to mention, to go back to Village Theatre again, also, I think the principles of equity inclusion was so much outstanding when these applications were being reviewed. And I think the ELTA committee uploaded these two organizations.
Yeah, thank you. And just to highlight the events that they want to hold, they want to coordinate with the city for a Juneteenth event. They want to reach out to the Mexican community for an event, and also to our Muslim community for one of their events. So these are kind of things that Chair March touched upon in terms of reaching out to our communities and meeting those communities where they are by providing opportunities for them to experience cultural events that are meaningful to them. So I think that's really important. The other question I had or wanted to highlight was the race that's going on, the trail race that's going on. And was it the trail race that had the adaptive cycling, or was it the other event? The point I want to make is we have an adaptive cycling event, which is going to reach out to people that may not be able to ride the traditional bike, but the adaptive cycling from Outdoors for All, that'll be working with this group, will provide that opportunity to have cycling that people that might be missing an arm or a leg or other appendage can still ride and enjoy the outdoors. Can you touch upon that application just a little bit?
It's an application that was submitted by the Evergreen Mountain Bike, and kind of they were trying to look at this as an adaptive cycling event, and they focus their whole mind into people with disability. How can we now attract more people to Issaquah with disability to kind of enjoy these events? So they looked at based on your disability, they have trainers to kind of help you navigate through this kind of event, and again they had good support system to kind of help these folks to kind of also participate in this event. So it was so outstanding when they mentioned that they fleshed it out really clearly to the applications.
Yeah, that's great. I really hope that people will find out about that event and take part in it. It really makes a difference when they're able to enjoy the great outdoors. The last question I had for you, Pharrell, was during our conversation in the meeting, we talked about the communication and follow-up that we were going to initiate between the hotels and the applicant that received funding. Could you touch on that a little bit and how we hope that communication will lead to more economic development for our hotels and economic development in our city?
Thank you. So we came up with some post analysis from this grant, whereby for the organizations that they awarded the LTAC funding, will communicate with the hoteliers to kind of follow up with this organization, because at the end of the day, we want to increase the overnight stays within Issaquah. And how are we going to market this kind of event? So we want to engage the hoteliers into this this process, whereby I will share this list of applicants, this organization that applicant to the hoteliers. So the hoteliers will be very much obliged to kind of follow up to this organization and kind of also market themselves. Because again, if there's an event that is Issaquah History Museum is doing, and an hotelier will reach out to Issaquah History Museum and kind of market the hotel to this event, kind of talk to the Issaquah History Museum that for overnight stays we have these A, B, C hotels around here. So it's a kind of follow-up that we are implementing to kind of involve also the hoteliers into these activities by kind of allowing them also to have a one-on-one conversation with this organization.
Yeah, that's a great summary. It's going to allow the hotel to know that the event is coming, and the event organizers to know that the hotel can provide opportunities for them for lodging and an after-hours reception or other things that can make a event more special and more memorable along the way. So I'll conclude my questions there and pass on to other committee members.
I have a question. How much does LTAC bring in each year, and how does that compare to this number, this recommended number? Ralph?
Last year, I'll give an example. I'll give a case study of last year. So last year, the revenue collected was $239,000. And again, we had a deficit from what we had estimated earlier. Because last year in 2023, the LTAC estimated a revenue of $245,000. But again, in last year, we anticipated that Fairfield Inn will open last year, but it didn't open. So that's why we had a deficit of around $6,000 for collections. So, and again, from 239,000, normally also, it's important also to let you know that also the LTAC, Visit Issaquah is funded from the LTAC dollars. So LTAC dollars, last year we funded them 210,000, and from the remaining dollars was allocated to the organizations that applied for these grants.
Thank you. Is there a conversation, your LTAC chair, at some point to discuss that mix between Visit Issaquah and this funding system?
Yeah, let me try to answer that question. The $50,000 that is in this allocation was approved by the council through the budget process. So if the council wanted in their discretion to increase it or decrease it, that certainly is something that we could do. The amount for Visit Issaquah was determined through our normal process as well in a conversation. One thing I would add is that there is still a surplus after those expenditures that we are saving and holding back for either a larger project, or if a bigger opportunity comes to us, say with a wayfinding project, that could be something that LTAC could explore using dollars for. So I don't know if that exactly answers your question, but that's how the division of the funds is kind of envisioned and set out right now.
Thank you. Deputy Council President, do you have any questions? No.
Yeah, no, it's just fine. Thanks.
Carl, can you bring up again your ask or what you're looking for from this? So it's really just our support for the LTAC grants then.
It would be support for the grants, and then probably direction in terms of whether or not we want it to be on the consent agenda or we feel that it needs to be somewhere else. Currently, it is scheduled for the consent agenda. If I could just close with just a couple of comments on my side, I would like to thank all the members of the committee that give their time. We have a member from the Hilton Hotel, a member from the Spring Hill Suites, a person from the Issaquah Chamber, and a person from Village Theater that give their time to sort through all these applications and try to have the best mix of recipients that meet the LTAC goals and try to bring some additional visits to Issaquah and exposure to Issaquah in the tourist industry. And I just want to commend them for their great work. They come to the meetings prepared, and they have great comments in their conversations, and we really couldn't do this work without those volunteers. Thank you.
Thank you. I'm assuming there's no public comment. Okay. Councilmember, Deputy Council President DiMichele.
Thank you. I remember when Zach was deputy council president, and I could never get his title right either. So it's a mouthful. Yeah, I support this. I know, having been on the Arts Commission, how much work goes into reviewing applications and discussion to allocate just the right amounts of money, and it looks like there was a very careful job done here. So I would support the recommendation as presented, and I would support putting it on the consent agenda for the March 4th meeting. Thank you.
Thank you. Yeah, I support that recommendation as well. I would love the next time it makes sense, though, to have a conversation again about, you tickled my ear there with, major projects and wayfinding and stuff like that. I would love to have a conversation at some point, maybe perhaps once we have a little bit better idea on stability of funding and that side of things, whether there's some money to work with.
No, that's great. And we have that conversation about every other meeting as we're talking about the funding. So we have our eye on it, and Jen Davis-Hayes does a great job availing us of opportunities that might be coming up for our consideration. So it's on our radar, definitely. Thank you.
Well, thank you for the presentation this evening, and I'll ask the city administrator if he has what he was looking for, and he's nodding his head. And so I think we can just go ahead and adjourn the meeting. So with that, we are adjourned this evening. I want to thank the staff who supported the meeting tonight, and the members of the committees and commissions, and those of you at home who are watching this meeting. Thank you.